So I have uncovered four basic ways that people abandon themselves. If you think of it in terms of an actual child, it may make it easier to understand. But we have an inner child, and our inner child is basically our true self, our soul, our feeling self, and we're responsible for those feelings. Most people don't grow up believing that they're responsible for their own feelings. They think that they're reactors to something external, to a person or a situation. But in inner bonding, as you know, we teach that we're responsible for our own feelings. And so there's four basic ways that we avoid this responsibility, which means we're abandoning ourselves. One of them is most of us have learned to judge ourselves. You're not good enough. What's the matter with you? You said the wrong thing. You're just bad. You're inadequate. You're unimportant. Now, if we said these things to an actual child, they would feel very abandoned. They would feel hurt. They would feel alone. Well, that's how we end up feeling on the inner level when we treat ourselves this way with these judgments. And yet, most of us have learned to absorb these judgments from our parents or other caregivers regarding how they treated us or how they treated themselves. Because sometimes they may have treated us okay, but they didn't treat themselves very well, and that was the role model. Another way we abandon ourselves is that many of us had a lot of pain as we were growing up. And the pain is in the body. Our feelings are in our body. We learn to go up in our head. And if we're in our head, we're not present. So that's like, for example, a child comes to you crying, and instead of attending to the child, you're on the computer or you're reading a book or you're grabbing some addictive thing, but you're ignoring the child's feelings. That's what happens on the inner level. We're ignoring ourselves when we're up in our head. And that makes us feel alone and abandoned on the inner level. A third way is that so many people have learned to numb their feelings with various addictions. They'll turn to food or alcohol or drugs or overwork or the internet or video games or pornography or all kinds of things that they'll turn to avoid feeling their feelings. Now, again, think of a child. You're grazing in front of the refrigerator when the child is pulling on you and wanting your attention, or you're grabbing a cigarette or a drink. The child feels alone and abandoned, and we feel that way on the inner level. The fourth way is extremely important in relationships, and that is that so many people have learned to make somebody else responsible for their feelings, especially in a primary relationship, because we do affect each other. But most people don't realize that making the other person responsible, blaming the other person, makes you a victim rather than learning to take responsibility for your own feelings. And that's like if you have a child, instead of taking care of that child, you're handing that child away to the other person. Here, it's your fault. You're making the child feel this. You take care of the child. Well, that's going to make the child feel abandoned and alone. If I'm the mom, or I'm the mom and the dad actually, and I'm giving this child away and saying it's your fault, you got to take care of it, I'm already rejecting myself. I'm already abandoning myself. And so of course, I'm going to feel alone, rejected, and abandoned.
Right. Okay. So, in simple terms, it's taking responsibility for our own feelings rather than feeling that our feelings can be really caused by people and situations outside of ourselves. So it's tending to those feelings within ourselves, just as you would look after an upset child. And it's thinking about it in those terms.
Yeah, and so we teach that there's two kinds of feelings. What we call the wounded feelings are the feelings that we actually cause with our self-abandonment. We cause the anxiety, depression, guilt, shame, aloneness, emptiness, jealousy. We cause these feelings with our self-abandonment. But then there's the feelings of life, the loneliness, the grief, the helplessness over others and outcomes, and the heartbreak. There's so much heartbreak in life. even though these are caused by others or situations, we are still responsible for learning to manage them. Because let's say somebody is being really mean and unloving, and that hurts the heart. When people are being mean, it hurts the heart. But to blame them is going to just create a big problem between you and the person. And so, even with a situation like that, where they are causing some heartache or heartbreak, I'm still responsible for realizing it, for being compassionate, for opening, for not letting my inner child be alone with it, showing up for her in ways that my parents didn't show up for me. And so, we're responsible for learning from our wounded feelings that are telling us that we're abandoning ourselves, and for lovingly managing the existential pain of life.
Yes. Okay. So that's a very key distinction. So I just want to go back over some of the ways you said people abandon themselves. And you started with judging yourself. And as you said, if a child is told they are worthless or not good enough by a parent, that is very painful. And the same is true when we do it to ourselves. And you also mentioned that many of those critical voices, it's like they can sound familiar. We may internalize, for example, the voices of parents or caregivers, as you say. And then we start to sort of take them to be truth. And
Right,
the ego tells us lies about ourselves. Um, one observation I have, sometimes it seems like the negative inner voice is obvious, but other times it can be unconscious. It can almost
right.
be operating under the surface. Do you encounter that? And obviously, then it becomes a little more tricky, would you say?
No, it doesn't, because um, step one of inner bonding is learning to be in your body with your feelings. So let's say that you got this background judgment that you're not aware of, that it's subconscious or unconscious. What you can be aware of are the feelings, because the feelings are going to be instant. The minute you're doing that, you're going to feel some tension, some anxiety, you're going to feel empty, you're going to feel depressed, you're going to feel angry. All kinds of feelings could come up as a result of that inner child being treated that way, even if you're not aware of it. And so, by learning to get out of your head and into your body, I call it having your inner baby monitor on, because when you when you have a baby and you want to be a good parent, you want to hear the minute that baby cries so that you
Yes.
can attend, you see.